Good morning. The eldership were challenged recently in a seminar by Steve Tollestrup to answer the question, what would the community of Thames lose if the Baptist Church didn't exist? Not what would we lose, but what would the community lose, which is a different question. Today I want to offer a suggestion as to what they would lose. I think we have a particular gift for the world, and the way to get that gift out to the world. I want to identify what makes us relevant and how we do it. So first, a question. What do we as a church offer that can be offered by no other organisation or group? We recognise that many things that we do are done or could be done by other groups. Social service agencies, friendship clubs, lodges, community service organisations, NGOs, amongst others. And many do it more professionally than we can. But there is one thing that they tend not to offer, and that is spirituality. Spirituality can be defined as the human quest for an experience of meaning, God, and the other. Spirituality connects a person with humanity and the universal mystery, with intuition and creativity, and is integral to wholeness. Spirituality is not the sole domain of mainstream religions. Think of the Satanists and the Wiccans and the Spiritualist Church, even some of the pyramid selling groups whose meetings resemble our worship services without singing. Spirituality is an inherent component of being human, but it has been and still is the missing component in most agencies and in the lives of most people. They've tried to resolve issues whilst disregarding the component called spirituality. It's trying to fill a bucket. It's like trying to fill a bucket when there's a hole in it. There's something missing and it won't work without it. Sigmund Freud described religion as part of the problem rather than part of the solution. So did psychiatrists up until recently, but that's not the case. It's now recognised in health models and social work in New Zealand, particularly those involved with Māori, that spirituality is a very important component of well-being. Our Western view of health and welfare finally is realising the reality that Māori already know. Spirituality is important in their lives. The Māori health model is called Whare Tapa Whā, a house with 4 walls. And it identifies those walls as taha tinana, physical health, Tana whānau, taha whānau, which is family health, taha hininaro, which is mental health, and taha wairua, spiritual health. It's in this last taha, this last wall, that we have our primary purpose and the most to offer. The other 3 taha, the other 3 walls can be done by lots of groups and organisations without the taha wairua. What we offer is that taha. The Government Health website recognises that the spiritual essence of a person is their life force. They admit that this determines us as individuals and as a collective. Who and what we are, where we have come from and where we're going. Another distinctly Māori, distinctly New Zealand social work model is called Te Wheki. The concept of Te Wheki is the octopus, is to define family health. The head of the octopus represents the te whānau. The eyes of the octopus is Waiora, which is total well-being for the individual and family. And each of the 8 tentacles represent a specific dimension of health. The dimensions are interwoven, and this represents a close relationship of the tentacles. One of the tentacles is Wairuatanga, spirituality. And it's in the area of Wairuatanga, in this model, that we can uniquely contribute. Modernism affirms the power of human beings to create, improve and reshape their environment with the aid of practical experimentation and scientific knowledge and technology. People trusted in modernity, in technology and medical science to solve all their problems. They felt they didn't need spirituality, that they thought spirituality was hocus pocus, that it was an opiate of the masses, that it was a sign of an uneducated population. But we've gone past modernity now. We've gone into a new phase. Sometimes it's called post-modernity, where our faith in technology and medical science has been shaken, and we're starting to recognise the tenets of modernity have not produced the cure-all panacea that we thought it was going to. People are turning to what they have previously abandoned. They're seeking other answers and are exploring that there may be something in what they have discarded. Particularly now as this world is racked with the COVID-19 virus, with the likelihood that that virus will be with us for a long time in various guises, and that science can't find a cure. People are starting to look for answers in spirituality. They look to Gaia, the Mother Earth. They look at Eastern religions, Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism. They look at ancient indigenous religions, the upsurge in the interest in Māori gods, or the English Wiccan. Or they look to the Force or the universe or something else. People are looking, but they're looking past the obvious, which is Christian spirituality. That's the gift and the point of difference that we as a church have. Not just spirituality, but Christian spirituality. Christian spirituality could be described as a quest for a fulfilled and authentic life that involves taking the beliefs and values of Christianity and weaving them into the fabric of our lives so that they provide breath and spirit and fire in our lives. The Christian expression of spirituality is in those two great commandments: to love God with all your heart and soul and mind, and to love your neighbour as yourself. Donald Miller, a Christian writer, opines that he doesn't think any church has ever been relevant to culture, to the human struggle, unless it believed in Jesus and the power of his gospel. Underline that: unless it believed in Jesus and the power of the gospel. And the great Pentecostal preacher Samuel Chadwick in the 1920s commented that the one vital cause of the failure of the church is the poverty of the spiritual life of its people. The key word we have that we hold on to is the word love. Love is the basis of our Christian spirituality. I believe the church worldwide has dropped the ball because we've not focused on love. We are seen by the world as naysayers. We're seen by the world as carriers of placards of hate. We are seen to be indifferent to the plight of those people who, lifestyle or other reasons, are on the fringes. That may not be the reality, but that's how the church is perceived. I hope that critique does not apply to our congregation, but we do need to have a little self-examination just to make sure. Our focus this year in Thames Baptist at the Elders Retreat, the words from God were that Christ is at the centre. Perhaps we've been given that focus because he hasn't quite been at the centre, and we need to readjust our alignment. Christian spirituality is all about Christ. If we recognise that the basis and the meaning of church is a person in Christ, how do we demonstrate that as a congregation? How do we convey the need for Christian spirituality in a world that has bypassed it as a viable option? I think there's a two-stage answer. The first thing is we need to focus on our own spirituality and the corporate spirituality of the church. How do we live and exhibit within this congregation the love that we're tasked by God to show? In the areas of the words from Jesus that start, love one another, encourage one another. All the one another things relate to us as individuals working in a congregation. Christian spirituality is defined as the practice of beliefs of a Christian faith. It includes both knowledge and action, and it relies on the power of the Holy Spirit to live according to God's will. It's concerned with all of a person's life. Rather than separating spiritual and physical and financial and social and other life components into distinct areas, Christian spirituality is concerned about how all of that life and all its complexity connects with our relationship with God. Joan Chittister, who's an outspoken Christian voice on justice issues in the States, comments that spirituality is living the ordinary life extraordinarily well, and commented quite scathingly that if we are not spiritual where we are and as we are, we're not spiritual at all. Ooh, that hurts. The pursuit of Christian spirituality will result in what the Bible calls the fruit of the Spirit. And we know what they are. They are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, and there is no law against them. See, personal spirituality is important, but so is the corporate spirituality of the congregation that is Thames Baptist. If we believe that if we believe in the Christian proclamation that in John 15:16 Jesus says, "You did not choose me, but I chose you," it makes sense that the congregation is more than an accidental conglomeration of individual choices. We come together because we are called to be together. Deep calls deep, it says in Psalm 42. Deep calls deep, and spirit to spirit. The church could be a safe, contemplative space for people to notice together the different dimensions of their corporate experience, and nature enables deeper patterns of communal spirit to rise so that we can celebrate, be involved in conversion and healing and empowerment. Is that the case with our congregation? See, failure to address our spirituality individually and corporately as a church condemns what we do to failure. Peter Scazzero, in his book Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, says, "Work for God that is not nourished by a deep interior life with God will be eventually contaminated by other things such as ego, power, needing approval of and from others, and buying into the wrong ideas of success in the mistaken belief that we cannot fail." In order to work for God, we need to have experience of God in a deep and meaningful way. We need to have a deep Christian spirituality in us and in the corporate life of the church. Only from the basis of our own individual and church spirituality can there come a second stage. The second stage is this, which is the outworking of Christian spirituality into the community which so desperately needs it. Our activity for God can only flow from a life with God. We cannot be what we do not possess. Out of our own spirituality, corporate and individual, comes our outworking to other areas of our lives. When our spirituality is established, it empowers us to move forward. Christian spirituality moves us out into the world. Spirituality that is oblivious to the suffering or the injustice in the world is not Christian spirituality. Christians who experience God deeply in their lives don't just pray and worship, they also care for the people around them. They care for the poor and the disadvantaged, and they seek the correction or amelioration of social evils. Our Christian spirituality should be a beacon for those seeking answers in a world disillusioned by modernism. We should let our light shine, as it says in Matthew 5:14. You are the light of the world. A city on the hill cannot be hidden. A light shines, and we know in the natural that when we turn on the light at night, moths are drawn to it and people are drawn to it. The Puritan John Winthrop in 1630, as he was travelling in that first group of people across to America, wrote a sermon, The Model of Christian Charity it was called. In it he said, "For we must consider that we shall be a city upon the hill. The eyes of all people are upon us, so that if we shall deal falsely with our God in the work that we have undertaken, and so cause him to withdraw his present help from us, we shall be made a story and a byword through the world." If we don't live out our Christian spirituality, we will be consigned to the rubbish heap of people's opinion. A lighthouse shines. A light shines. A lighthouse shines, and we often think of a lighthouse as being a warning to keep away. But it also symbolises a way forward and help in navigating through the world. In John 8:12, Jesus said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." Interestingly, Jesus says he is the light, but he also says, so are we. Our demonstration of love for one another, and in all those one another verses, acts as a beacon of light to the world seeking the light. Our demonstration of love for others as ourselves also acts as a beacon of light to the people who know only judgment and hopelessness and hostility. I believe that as we move into this post-Christian New Zealand, our Christian spirituality has a chance to shine out. Ephesians 5:15 and 16 says, "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil." See, no longer will Christianity be watered down and assimilated into a pseudo-Christian country, but will stand out as a viable alternative to a world where God is not even considered as an option, and where policies and procedures, government or local government or even organisations, are driven by humanist views far away from God's principles. As I was writing this, I was thinking there's another possible outcome of this Christian spirituality that we should offer to the world. One that quite excites me, really. The Christian church in New Zealand, after such a great start with the missionaries, post-treaty have failed to connect with Māori because the church has been seen as siding with the invaders rather than with the indigenous Māori. But I wonder if spirituality is our base foundation, whether that could be a key to engagement with Māori once again. Māori Marsden is quoted as saying, "The Māori cultural milieu is rooted in both the temporal world and transcendental world, which brings a person into intimate relationship with the gods and his universe." I wonder whether a renewed focus on Christian spirituality, which is so often absent from the world, could be the connection point between the church and Māori once again. So here we have it. Our core should be a particular distinctive called Christian spirituality. We should display it in our lives individually and corporately as a church. We can then demonstrate that spirituality into a world where spirituality has been forgotten. We will then be something missed if we cease to exist. Christian spirituality explains and addresses two major concerns of the church: discipleship and evangelism. Both of those activities grow when we focus on our spirituality as Christians. God bless you.